World War II was one of the most transformative events in modern history, and the United States' involvement played a pivotal role in shaping the outcome. But what if the U.S. had chosen to remain neutral throughout the war? This counterfactual scenario invites complex speculation, touching on military strategy, global politics, economics, and the moral weight of inaction. A neutral America. Background. In the years leading up to the U.S. entry into World War II, isolationist sentiment was strong. The trauma of World War I, coupled with the Great Depression, made many Americans wary of entangling alliances. Groups like the America First Committee, supported by figures such as Charles Lindbergh, pushed for a strict policy of neutrality, even as Europe burned and Asia fell under Japanese aggression. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, though inclined toward aiding the Allies, had to navigate these isolationist currents carefully until the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, forced a dramatic shift in public opinion. But suppose that attack never occurred, or that the U.S. decided not to respond with full military engagement. What would a truly neutral stance have meant? Europe under the Nazi boot. Without American involvement, the course of the European theater would likely have been drastically different. By 1941, Britain was hanging on by a thread. American material aid through programs like Lend-Lease helped Britain and later the Soviet Union stay in the fight. Without American arms, food, and vehicles, the Allied war effort would have been severely weakened. The Soviet Union bore the brunt of the fighting against Nazi Germany, but the massive shipments of U.S. supplies, trucks, planes, and raw materials were critical to their resilience. A neutral America might have left the Soviet Union overextended or even defeated in the East, especially if Germany had been able to concentrate more forces there. D-Day, the massive Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied France in 1944, would almost certainly not have occurred without the U.S. Without this Western Front, Hitler could have redeployed troops to the Eastern Front, possibly capturing Moscow or pushing the Soviets beyond the Urals. A Europe dominated by the Third Reich for a longer period, or indefinitely, would have been a chilling possibility. The fate of the Holocaust. One of the most tragic consequences of American neutrality would have been the continuation or expansion of the Holocaust. The U.S. military not only helped liberate concentration camps, but its pressure on Germany hastened the collapse of the Nazi regime. More importantly, the broader message of U.S. non-involvement might have signaled to Germany that there would be no external consequences for genocide. Without pressure from Allied governments, efforts to halt or mitigate the Holocaust would have been virtually non-existent. Millions more might have perished. The Pacific theater and Japanese expansion. In Asia, a neutral America would have likely meant unchecked Japanese expansion. The Japanese Empire had already occupied large swaths of China and Southeast Asia. Without fear of American naval intervention, Japan could have consolidated its Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, potentially taking India and Australia out of Allied control or forcing a negotiated peace with the weakened British Empire. U.S. naval power was decisive in the Pacific War. Battles such as Midway and the island-hopping campaign toward Japan were only possible due to America's industrial capacity and resolve. A neutral stance might have led to a permanent Japanese presence in the Pacific, posing long-term threats to regional autonomy, global trade, and democratic values in Asia. Economic and technological consequences. World War II catapulted the U.S. out of the Great Depression, transforming it into the world's foremost industrial and military power. In a neutral scenario, this economic revival might not have occurred, or would have developed much more slowly. The war also accelerated technological advancement. Radar, jet engines, rocketry, and especially the atomic bomb, developed under the Manhattan Project, were direct results of the conflict. Without U.S. involvement, it's possible the bomb would never have been developed by America, or worse, might have been developed first by Nazi Germany. Post-war world without U.S. leadership. One of the most profound long-term consequences would have been the absence of American leadership in shaping the post-war order. The United Nations, the Marshall Plan, NATO, the Bretton Woods system, all were led by the U.S. in the wake of victory. Without these structures, Europe might have descended into prolonged chaos or fallen completely under Soviet or fascist control. Moreover, without the U.S. to balance the Soviet Union in the Cold War, global bipolarity could have turned into unipolar Soviet dominance, or a much more violent struggle for supremacy between Russia, Japan, and Nazi Europe. Moral and ideological implications. There is also a deeper philosophical question. What kind of world would have emerged if the most powerful democracy had refused to confront tyranny? U.S. neutrality might have preserved lives in the short term, but at the cost of enabling far greater atrocities and authoritarian dominance in the long run. By staying on the sidelines, the U.S. would have forfeited not only strategic influence but also moral authority. The war helped define America's global identity, as a flawed but decisive force for freedom and stability. While neutrality might have spared American lives and resources in the short term, the long-term consequences would likely have been catastrophic, not only for Europe and Asia but for the U.S. itself. A world dominated by fascist and imperial powers would have been unstable, repressive, and hostile to democratic values. American neutrality in World War II, rather than preserving peace, might have allowed totalitarianism to triumph. In the end, America's entry into World War II was not just a strategic decision, it was a defining moment for the modern world. Without it, the 20th century might have ended very differently, and far more darkly.